So the Chiefs are reportedly set to face off against a division rival in an international matchup week 1 of the NFL season, and there are definitely mixed opinions about this from Chiefs fans and non-Chiefs fans alike. Well, in today's video, I'll not only dive into this pretty exciting matchup, but also try to address the concerns some fans are having. But first, how about those? Alright, so NFL schedule leaks are happening, and we now know the first 2 games of the 2025 NFL season. The full release is happening throughout the week, yes, but then it'll officially be out for every single team by Wednesday. But I do want to talk about the first 2 games because one involves, obviously, the Kansas City Chiefs. In theory, the first one, I'm not going to spend a bunch of time on, but it's worth talking about since it is the season opener. That game features the defending Super Bowl champs, the Eagles, facing off against the Dallas Cowboys. The team that wins the Super Bowl typically opens up the season, which is why the Chiefs were in the last 2 season openers, but I will say, I am a little disappointed this is against the Cowboys. The Eagles could have taken on the Commanders in an NFC Championship rematch, or even the Detroit Lions, which would have been much more exciting to me personally. But from a viewer's perspective, this game will definitely do numbers. The Cowboys haven't had a deep playoff run in over 20 years, but they still have a massive fan base. Dak Prescott should be healthy after having to miss roughly half the season due to needing his hamstring operated on and surgically repaired. Then they, of course, have one of the best wideouts in the game, CeeDee Lamb. They also just traded for George Pickens from the Pittsburgh Steelers. So that's a pretty solid 1-2 receiver combo, and their tight end Jake Ferguson has averaged roughly 60 catches for 600 receiving yards over the last 2 years. We also can't forget about Micah Parsons over there on the defensive side of the ball, and that's just to name one guy. Then we know that the Eagles roster is absolutely stacked. I'm curious to see what their defense is going to look like because they had a lot of turnover on that side of the ball, but we all know that Saquon Barkley is going to be an absolute problem because yes, he is that good, but Philly's O-line is rock solid, and then of course Jalen Hurts still has A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and tight end Dallas Goedert to throw the ball to. I'll be more curious to see how their defense looks because Darius Slay, Milton Williams, Josh Sweat, and C.J. Gardner-Johnson are no longer on the team. That's a lot of losses on defense, but they still have a fantastic duo in the secondary. Second-year guys like Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean. Then we also can't forget the D-line has some absolute playmakers there. Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter, and Nolan Smith Jr. They also went heavy on defense in the draft to make up for some of these losses and retain their standout linebacker, Zach Bond. So I think they're going to be just fine this year. In fact, my way too early prediction for this game is that they beat the Cowboys for the season opener. Next up, this is where things get a bit more interesting for us Chiefs fans because the Friday game is set to be in Sao Paulo, Brazil, with the Chargers being the quote-unquote home team. We've known that for quite some time, but there have now been several sources indicating the Chargers' opponent will be none other than the Kansas City Chiefs. That means the first game of the season for KC is an international game against arguably their toughest opponent in the AFC West. Some could make a case that the toughest opponent this year within the division is the Broncos, and that's fine with me. Either way, you can no longer sleepwalk past either of these teams. And hey, speaking of the Broncos, this did get confirmed right before I was about to hit export on this video, and that is the Broncos heading to Arrowhead to take on the Chiefs on Christmas. And I don't know that I love it, but it is what it is. The Chiefs are playing on Christmas yet again. That's either the best Christmas ever if the Chiefs beat the Broncos or the worst Christmas ever like we experienced when the Chiefs lost to the Raiders a couple of years ago. And yeah, with that being on Prime, that means it is going to be the evening of Christmas because Christmas falls on a Thursday. So there you go. Love it or hate it. The Chiefs are going to be playing the Broncos Christmas night on a Thursday, at Arrowhead at least. But hey, back to the Chargers. For LAC, head coach Jim Harbaugh took the Chargers from just 5 wins in 2023 to 11 wins in 2024 and a playoff berth. And that was just his first year with the team. And that was almost with the exact same roster. Obviously some differences, but the core of it was about the same. Obviously playing in Brazil brings a minor concern of the field conditions being absolutely awful last year, but I'll touch on that here in a bit. Before I do, the Chiefs and Chargers, per usual, faced off twice against each other in 2024. The first game was week 4, the game where Rashee Rice sadly got injured very early when Mahomes friendly fired himself into Rice's knee when Christian Fulton picked Mahomes off. Yes, the same guy that is now on the Chiefs played a role in that happening, which is a bit ironic. This also happened to be running back Kareem Hunt's debut after Isaiah Pacheco went down with an ankle injury at the end of Week 2's matchup against the Bengals. LAC was the home team for this one, even though it was largely represented by Chiefs fans in the stands, because most of LA's fans still live in San Diego, and if KC managed to win this game, it would be the 11th straight road game KC won against the Chargers. Well, things obviously started out very ugly, with Rice going down and LA finding themselves up 10-0 in the first quarter, but they actually wouldn't score, thankfully, the rest of the game. KC shut down their running back duo in J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards, holding them to a combined 51 yards. On the flip side, Kareem Hunt had 69 nice yards himself on the ground. Meanwhile, Kelsey led the pass catchers with 7 catches for 89 yards. Worthy only had 3 catches in this one, but one was a 54-yard missile from Mahomes for a touchdown. That was Patrick's longest TD pass of the entire season, with Worthy's 50-yard strike that he caught in the second half of Super Bowl 59 being a close second. That touchdown from Worthy didn't happen in the Chargers game until 4 minutes left in the second quarter. And prior to that, the offense was not great, to say the least. A fumble, interception, punt, and then just prior to halftime, Butker did attempt a 65-yard field goal to tie things at 10-all and missed because 65-yarder is extremely difficult to make. LA then missed a field goal before KC made one immediately after. But what was maybe the play of the game here, or the series of that game rather, was the defensive stand that Steve Spagnuolo's defense made when backed up to their own 3-yard line. LA went for it on 4th and 1 at the 3, so 4th and goal, and turned it over on downs. That ultimately set up the Samaje Perine 2-yard touchdown run a bit later, and KC held on to win 17-10. Now, it's worth noting that the Chargers were somehow very banged up in this game, even though it was only week 4. Joey Bosa was out, Derwin James was suspended, then both of their tackles, Rashawn Slater and rookie right tackle Joe Alt, didn't play either because of injuries. On top of that, Justin Herbert was dealing with a banged up ankle, and so it's safe to say they were not firing on all cylinders. Neither was KC, though, as Rice left early on in that game with the knee injury. Isaiah Pacheco was also out with a broken ankle, and Mike Dana calf also didn't play. Then they met again at Arrowhead on December 8th, but the Chargers offense really struggled in this one as their main weapon in Ladd McConkey didn't suit up to play. They were also without J.K. Dobbins, and things were not looking great for LAC as KC found themselves up 13-10 at halftime. Harrison Butker was out, but Matthew Wright made 4 total field goals, with the only touchdown of the day for the Chiefs being a 9-yard catch made by DeAndre Hopkins. The Chargers, though, had back-to-back drives to open up the second half that ended in touchdowns, so just like that, they found themselves up 14-13, Chiefs trailing by 1. From there, each team made another field goal to make that 17-16, Chiefs trailing by 1 in the fourth quarter. They were able to go 14 plays, though, for 47 yards, and that helped set up a game-ending field goal attempt by Matthew Wright for the win. It was a measly 31-yard attempt, by the way, so shorter than an extra point, but if you remember, it doinked in off the upright to secure a very close call win for the Chiefs to sweep LA for the 2024 season. As you can tell, when these two teams play each other, it's typically quite the battle. In fact, while KC typically wins these matchups, 10 of the 14 times they've faced off in the Mahomes era have ended in one-score games. All in all, the upcoming 2025 matchup in Brazil is not going to be an easy one, though I really think it'll feel like a home game for the Chiefs. There's a ton of Brazilian Chiefs fans, and that, with the help of the Swifties, should make for a massive sea of red. It's interesting that the Chargers could have protected their home game against the Chiefs, but they used their 2 protections for home games for non-AFC West opponents. So instead of a sea of red in LA, it's going to be mainly a sea of red in Brazil. Fine by me. Now, the field conditions from last year's game in Brazil is a concern for some, and before I talk through that, because it's worth processing through, I wanted to look at the state of the Chargers roster and how it's looking for 2025. They did lose Joey Bosa in free agency to the Bills, and also wide receiver Joshua Palmer to the Bills. They like former Chargers players, I guess. And then Christian Fulton, cornerback Christian Fulton, is now obviously with the Kansas City Chiefs. But LA did bring back Mike Williams on a 1-year deal. They signed former Steelers running back Najee Harris and also drafted one of my favorite running backs in this year's draft out of UNC, and that is, of course, Omarion Hampton. Justin Herbert already had wide receiver Quentin Johnston take a step up last year, but the Irishman Ladd McConkey had to almost carry the wide receiver room on his back. They had a couple tight ends, Will Dissly, Smart. They made plays when needed, but Ladd McConkey was primarily the guy leading that room. Well, to further offset that workload for Ladd, aside from signing Mike Williams, they drafted wide receiver Trey Harris out of Ole Miss in the second round, and that is a great fit for them in my opinion. So that's back-to-back offensive weapons, for the Chargers from the 2025 NFL Draft, which should be very helpful for their offense. They have a pretty solid O-line as it is, especially the tackle duo of Rashawn Slater and their former first-round pick, Joe Alt. They still have plenty of guys on defense as well, even though Bosa's gone. They got Khalil Mack, safety Derwin James, cornerback Tarheeb Still, as well as their sack leader from last year in Tuli Tuipulotu. On top of that, Harbaugh has another offseason of building this roster the way he wants it under his belt, and this game is going to be a very tough one, field conditions aside. And I've brought up the field conditions more than once in this video because last year the Eagles and Packers played each other Friday, week 1 of the 2024 NFL season in Sao Paulo, Brazil. And a huge storyline after that game was the very slick field conditions. Both teams were slipping and sliding all around, and part of the issue was they tried to sort of retrofit how they have fields set up for soccer players, but the average soccer player weighs well under 200 pounds, whereas the average football player is, of course, well over 200 pounds. And so this was definitely part of the problem. Some players did switch cleats from the original or regular cleats you would wear to the longer 7-studded, less comfortable cleats that you would wear for slicker field conditions. They did this during pregame warmups, while others switched to them early on during the game when they found out how slick the field was. The problem is that did help some players, but others still struggled to find consistent solid footing even with those cleats on. Offensive lineman Lane Johnson said it's one of those fields where the top just came off pretty easily. So obviously there are some concerns about the field conditions for this upcoming season, but back in February, the NFL said they are working with stadium officials to ensure the field is in better condition this year. Honestly, I don't even care whose fault it was last year. The NFL with a lack of proper prep, Brazil's stadium officials, or a little bit of both. Just fix it this year, and I think it's going to be an awesome game. I have some confidence, honestly, that the field conditions will be better, and combine that with this basically being a home game for the Chiefs, and I do like their odds to win this one. Something else very intriguing about this game, though, is the fact that YouTube themselves are reportedly favored to get the rights to stream this game for the first time ever. It might cost them around $100 million to get this, but Google owns YouTube, and they have more money than we could even possibly imagine, so okay, cool. Last year, the game in Brazil was exclusively on Peacock and obviously paywalled. But get this, if YouTube does land the streaming rights for this game, they are expected to make this available for free worldwide on YouTube itself. So no paywall. You can just go to youtube.com and watch the game no matter where you live. This is honestly a potential game changer for the masses, and it'll be interesting to see if this happens, if YouTube gets the rights to this game and they actually do stream it on YouTube for free globally. How is the competition going to respond to this in the future? Will it help with less paywalled games or maybe some free trials taking place for people who don't have the current services like Netflix, Peacock, Prime, or wherever? Or nah, the paywalls are here to stay and will be the main way regardless because most of us will pay to watch them anyway. And in case you're sitting here like, I don't care if it's on YouTube, I do not want to watch this game there, I want to watch it how I normally do. Well, the good news is, at least if you live in the US, you'll be able to access this via US-based YouTube TV and cable services as well. So have no fear. But hey, make sure to let me know your thoughts on this game, the field conditions, and how nervous that makes you, as well as your thoughts on YouTube potentially being able to stream it for free worldwide in the comments down below. And until next time, let's go. Let's freaking go. How about those?